When the alarm first echoed through Colony Helios, no one believed it. People thought it was only another drill, another mistake in the alert system. The colony had been peaceful for many years, and danger felt like something that happened to someone else, somewhere far away. Children played in the long metal corridors, machines hummed in quiet rhythm, and workers moved between towers of stacked crates, certain that life would stay this way forever. No one expected a real attack. No one imagined that something ancient, angry, and intelligent was approaching. Rylan, a young technician, stood on the bridge walkway above the cargo bay when the second siren shook the entire building. This time, the lights flickered red. Workers froze, tools dropped, and the air filled with frightened whispers. Rylan looked out the window toward the sky dome. What he saw made his breath stop. Dark shapes moved above the clouds. They were not ships from the colony. They were not friendly. They spread like shadows with sharp wings glowing faint blue. He had heard stories about raiders in deep space, but no one ever thought they would come here. Chaos broke out inside the colony. Adults shouted for their children. Soldiers rushed to the armory. People stumbled and hid as the ground shook again and again. Something had landed outside, something massive. The colony walls trembled like they were made of thin paper. Rylan grabbed the railing to stay steady as loud explosions hit the surface. He wanted to run, but fear made his legs heavy. He remembered the training videos, stay calm, follow the evacuation path, but everything looked wrong now. The raiders were fast, too fast. Down in the lower pens, a science officer named Mara hurried toward one of the research cages. Inside stood a strange creature the colony had rescued months ago. It was small, furry, and looked almost harmless to anyone who did not know better. The workers often joked about it, calling it useless or lazy. They laughed at its wide eyes and slow movements. They mocked it for eating too much and sleeping too long. Some even said it was a mistake bringing it to the colony. They never gave it a real name, only calling it the honey badger. But Mara knew there was something different about it. Something strong, something old. The creature watched her with sharp, burning eyes. It did not panic despite the shaking walls and distant explosions. Mara felt a strange comfort when she stood near it, as if the creature understood things she never said. She pressed her hand to the cage glass and whispered that the colony was under attack. The honey badger tilted its head slowly. Its claws clicked softly against the metal floor. There was intelligence in its eyes, a deep awareness that most people never noticed. It stepped closer to the door as if ready for something she could not imagine. Outside, in the open grounds, families ran across the wide landing field. Ships tried to lift off, but were shot down by the raiders before they could rise even 10 meters. A young boy named Eli searched for his mother in the smoke and noise. He cried as he stumbled through the ash that fell like dark snow. The sky glowed orange and fire burned across one of the main towers. People screamed for help. The raiders moved through the chaos with cruel confidence. They pushed the colonists to the ground. They dragged others away. Their armor was black and shaped like sharp bones, their voices deep and twisted by metal filters. They had come for resources, for slaves, and for anything of value. The colony had no real army to fight them. Rylan pushed his way through the crowd in the corridor, trying to reach the transport lifts. He saw Eli alone, shaking and crying near the broken walkway. Flames lit the boy's face. Rylan rushed to him and grabbed his hand. He promised to take him somewhere safe, even though he was not sure such a place existed anymore. They ran together through the dust-filled hallway, listening to heavy footsteps and distant weapons firing. Back in the research wing, Mara unlocked the honey badger's cage. This act was against every rule she had ever learned. But something inside her knew this was the right choice. The colony was falling apart. The raiders were everywhere. Nothing was strong enough to stop them, but she believed this creature could do something that humans could not. She whispered that the colony needed help. The honey badger stepped out slowly, stretching its limbs. Its back fur lifted slightly with static energy. Its eyes began to glow brighter as if a fire had awakened inside. Mara followed it down the corridor. At first she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The creature moved quietly, almost too quietly, until they reached the main exit. Then the honey badger stopped. It sniffed the air. Mara felt the temperature shift. It was like standing beside a storm just before it breaks. The creature let out a low growl that vibrated through the floor. It pushed the door open and stepped into the burning courtyard. Outside, Rylan and Eli ran toward the same area from the opposite side. Rylan froze when he saw the raiders rushing toward them with raised weapons. Eli screamed and held tightly to his arm. Rylan looked around for anything, any wall, any cover, any hope. There was none. He shielded the boy with his own body, certain this was the end. The honey badger emerged from the smoke. The raiders laughed when they saw the small creature. They did not even lift their weapons at first. They mocked it just like everyone in the colony had. But then the creature's eyes blazed like molten gold. Its muscles tightened. The ground cracked beneath its feet. A deep growl rolled across the courtyard. The raiders' laughter faded. The honey badger moved. It became a blur of fury, claws flashing like blades of light. It leapt at the nearest raider and struck with strength no one expected. Armor shattered. Sparks flew. The creature spun, roared, and attacked again. The raiders fell back in fear. Rylan held Eli close as wind and dust rushed past them. Myra watched from the doorway, stunned by what she had unleashed. The colony had mocked the honey badger. But now, in the middle of fire and fear, it stood alone against an army. And it was winning. The courtyard shook with every strike the honey badger delivered. The raiders, who were trained soldiers with heavy armor and sharp energy weapons, could not understand how a small creature moved with such impossible speed. Each time they tried to fire, the honey badger was already somewhere else. Dust exploded in small clouds as it darted past them, claws tearing through metal like cloth. Its roars echoed across the colony, mixing with the sounds of crashing debris and frightened screams. Rylan held Eli tightly as he watched the battle unfold. He had never seen anything like this. He had grown up on the colony his entire life and never believed in stories about ancient animals with hidden power. But now one stood right in front of him, fighting to protect them. Eli's eyes stayed wide, tears still dry on his cheeks, but he slowly loosened his grip on Rylan's arm. For the first time since the attack began, the boy felt a small spark of hope. Mara ran toward them, waving her arms, shouting for them to move to safety. She could barely hear herself over the chaos. Rylan pulled Eli up and followed her quickly. They ran behind a damaged wall that still stood strong. From there they watched as the honey badger continued its fierce attack. The raiders regrouped, forming a line, planning to shoot all at once. They raised their rifles together. The honey badger stopped moving and faced them. Its fur glowed faintly, its claws lifted and ready. There was silence for a brief moment, a strange moment where even the flames seemed to pause. Then the entire line of raiders fired at once. The bright blue energy pulses shot across the courtyard in a blinding flash. When the light faded, the honey badger was still standing. Smoke rose from its armor and its fur had burned patches, but its eyes burned brighter than ever. With a deep roar, it charged again. The raiders began to fall back, fear finally breaking their confidence. They never expected resistance from a creature they thought was nothing. Now they were the ones running, scrambling to escape the fury that chased them. Rylan could hardly believe what he was seeing. He turned to Mara and asked how the creature was able to do this. Mara shook her head. She explained that the honey badger was not just an animal. Scans showed strange energy inside it, old genetic markers, and unusual strength for its size. She always suspected it came from a world far more dangerous than anything humans knew. She wanted to study it more, learn its secrets, but the colony leadership never allowed it. They said it was not worth the time. They said it was only a strange animal. They laughed at the idea that it could be special. Now those same people were hiding, praying the creature could save them. The ground shook again as another blast hit the far side of the colony. More raider ships landed, their engines kicking up dust storms. The honey badger growled, sensing new danger. It turned to face the ships while Rylan, Eli, and Mara hid behind the wall. One raider, larger than the others and carrying a heavy weapon, stepped forward. He yelled commands that rattled through the air. He pointed at the honey badger and dozens of soldiers formed a circle. They raised shields, creating a glowing barrier around themselves. This time they did not laugh. They took slow, careful steps, as if approaching something far more dangerous than before. Mara whispered that this was a tactic used only for extremely strong enemies. She knew then that the raiders understood the truth. The honey badger was not a joke anymore. It was a threat. The large raider aimed the heavy weapon at the creature. The honey badger braced itself, claws digging into the broken ground. The weapon charged with a deep humming sound that vibrated in everyone's chest. Rylan covered Eli's ears as the weapon fired. A sharp beam of red energy shot forward and hit the honey badger directly. This time the creature was thrown backward. It skidded across the ground and crashed into a pile of metal crates. Dust rose into the air. Eli gasped. Rylan shouted the creature's name even though it had none. Myra ran a few steps forward, wanting to help, but the raiders blocked her path. The circle tightened. The honey badger lay still for a moment. The colony held its breath. Then the creature pushed itself back up, slowly at first. Pain showed in the way it bent its back. Its breathing came heavy. But then its eyes lit again with the same fierce gold. The creature shook the dust from its fur and stood taller than before. A wave of heat rippled from its body, and sparks danced along its armor. Something inside it had awakened even more. The raider leader stepped back in fear, realizing the weapon had not stopped it. The honey badger roared with a sound so powerful the air trembled. It leapt into the air with incredible force, landing inside the raider's circle. The glowing shields cracked as the creature struck them with glowing claws. The raiders stumbled back. The honey badger spun, slashing and smashing through their formation. The shields shattered like glass. The raider leader tried to fire again, but the creature was already on him. With one powerful strike, it knocked the weapon away. The leader fell to the ground, stunned. The honey badger stood over him, growling, its eyes burning like fire. Rylan stared in shock as raiders scattered in panic. Eli whispered softly that the creature was protecting them. Myra nodded, whispering that she finally understood one thing. The honey badger was not fighting because it was trained or forced or ordered. It was fighting because it chose to. The colony around them continued to fall apart. Buildings exploded in the distance. Civilians ran in every direction. Raider ships circled overhead, preparing another attack. The honey badger stepped away from the defeated raider leader and looked toward the central tower. It sensed something wrong there, something more dangerous than anything yet. Rylan realized where it was looking. The main power core was inside that tower. If the raiders damaged it, the entire colony would fall. They would have no shelter left. The honey badger began to move toward the tower. Myra, Rylan, and Eli followed, unsure what waited for them inside the burning heart of the colony, but certain of one truth now. The creature they all mocked might be their only chance to survive. The path toward the central tower was filled with smoke, falling metal, and broken walls. Sparks jumped from damaged cables, lighting the corridor in flashes of blue and orange. Every step echoed with fear and urgency. Rylan held Eli's hand tightly as they moved behind the honey badger, who walked slowly but with a purpose that felt stronger than the chaos around them. Myra followed close behind, recording everything with her small scanner, even though she knew there might not be time to save any of the data. The colony's main tower rose high above the burning structures. Once it had been the safest part of the settlement, the place where people gathered for meetings, celebrations, and news broadcasts. Now it looked like a giant torch, fire spreading along its outer walls and black smoke pouring from shattered windows. Raider ships circled it like hungry insects, firing at anything that moved. The ground trembled as explosions echoed through the air. The honey badger stopped and sniffed the wind. Its eyes narrowed. Rylan noticed how its fur bristled, how its muscles tightened. The creature sensed something dangerous inside the tower, not just raiders, something bigger. They reached the entrance, which had been blown open. Pieces of metal lay scattered like broken teeth. The lights inside the tower flickered, some hanging loose from their sockets. Alarms screamed endlessly. The honey badger walked inside without hesitation. Rylan and Myra hesitated for only a moment before following. Eli clung to Rylan's arm but didn't resist. He trusted the creature more than anything now. Inside the tower, the hallways were filled with dust and smoke. Shadows twisted on the walls as fire burned in different rooms. The sound of distant footsteps, shouts, and running machinery echoed through the space. The honey badger led them through the dark passages with confidence, as if it knew the layout better than they did. Or maybe it was following something they couldn't sense. They reached a large chamber where the ceiling had partially collapsed. A group of raiders stood guarding a heavy door on the far side. Their armor was thicker than the others, and they held weapons that looked stronger and more dangerous. They were elite units, trained for high-risk missions. The leader of the group barked orders with harsh metallic tones. Rylan ducked behind a fallen beam. Mara crouched beside him and whispered that the raiders must be trying to break into the power core. If they accessed it, they could overload the entire system. The explosion would wipe out half the colony instantly. The honey badger stepped into view. It didn't hide. It didn't pause. It simply stood in the center of the broken chamber, its eyes glowing like fire through the smoke. The raiders turned. At first they froze, unsure whether to laugh or attack. But after seeing the damage the creature had already caused across the colony, they didn't make the mistake of underestimating it again. They opened fire. Bright beams of blue energy filled the chamber, smashing into the floor and walls. The honey badger darted between the shots, moving with impossible speed. It leapt onto a fallen support beam and launched itself at the nearest raider. The impact threw the raider across the room, armor cracking loudly. The others tried to form a defensive line, but the creature was already behind them, claws slashing with furious precision. Mara pulled Rylan and Eli back as debris flew across the chamber. The honey badger roared, the sound powerful enough to make dust fall from the ceiling. One raider tried to fire a heavy cannon, but the creature slammed into him before he could pull the trigger. The cannon discharged into the wall, sending a shockwave through the floor. The raiders began to fall one by one. When the last raider hit the ground, the honey badger stood still in the center of the room, chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Smoke curled around its glowing eyes, making it look like a creature born from fire itself. Rylan stepped forward slowly, amazed and shaken. He had never seen such strength, not even in the colony's largest machines. Mara pointed to the heavy door the raiders had been trying to open. It was marked with warning symbols: danger, core access, restricted entry. Normally it required multiple security keys, but the attack had damaged most systems. Sparks crackled from the control panel. The honey badger approached the door and placed its claws on the metal. It pushed lightly at first, then harder. The thick steel groaned under its strength. The creature dug its claws into the gap and pulled. The door ripped open. A wave of hot air rushed out of the room. Inside, the power core chamber glowed bright red. Machinery hummed loudly and warning lights flashed in rapid patterns. The energy readings climbed dangerously. The core was overheating. If it reached its limit, the entire tower would explode. Mara rushed inside first, scanning the equipment with frantic gestures. She explained that the raiders must have planted a destabilizer device somewhere inside. If they didn't remove it soon, there would be no saving the colony. Rylan looked around but didn't understand most of the complex wires and glowing panels. Eli stayed close, afraid to move too far into the steaming room. The honey badger stepped inside and looked toward the far side of the core. Something hidden behind the machinery caught its attention. It growled softly, sensing danger. The creature leapt onto a platform and moved along narrow beams with surprising agility. It stopped above a cluster of pipes and wires. There, attached to the core's surface, was a strange device glowing with dark purple light. Myra gasped and shouted that it was a destabilizer, a powerful one. Removing it carefully could save the colony. Removing it the wrong way could blow everything apart instantly. The honey badger didn't wait. It reached down, studying the device with focused intensity. Somehow it understood the danger. It didn't act blindly. It moved with purpose, claws sliding gently into the device's edges. With one precise twist, it pulled the destabilizer out. The entire room shook. Warning lights turned bright red. The core's humming grew louder, almost like a scream. Myra ran forward and grabbed the device from the creature's claws. She rushed to a control panel and connected it to a cooling circuit. The purple glow faded slowly. The core readings dropped from critical to unstable, then to high, then slowly to safe levels. The tower stopped shaking. Rylan let out a long breath he didn't know he was holding. Eli sat on the floor in relief, his legs too tired from fear. Myra leaned back against the wall, exhausted but alive. The honey badger walked back across the beams and landed softly beside them. It looked tired now, its breathing deep, its fur scorched in many places. But its eyes still glowed with strength. The danger inside the tower was contained, but the colony outside still burned. Mara knew they could not stay here. The raiders would regroup. More would come. The attack wasn't over yet. The honey badger looked toward the exit as if sensing another threat approaching from somewhere beyond the colony walls. Rylan picked Eli up. Myra wiped sweat from her forehead. The honey badger growled softly, not in anger, but in warning. The next part of their struggle was waiting outside. The air outside the tower grew heavier as smoke drifted across the burned walkways. From a distance, the colony looked like a broken shell. Whole sections were destroyed. Fires burned without control. The sky above them still shook with the sound of raider engines. The honey badger stepped out first, scanning the surroundings with sharp eyes, glowing faintly through the haze. Rylan followed with Eli on his hip, while Mara checked her scanner for signs of incoming danger. But what the scanner showed made her heart sink. A massive signature appeared on the display, larger than any raider ship they had seen so far. It hovered at the edge of the colony, slowly approaching. The raiders were no longer testing the colony's defenses. They were bringing their strongest weapon. Rylan asked Mara what it meant, and she explained in a shaky voice that the raiders had released a command unit. These units controlled all other raider squads and were usually protected by enormous shields. If the command unit reached the heart of the colony, every raider on the ground and in the sky would synchronize attacks. There would be no point running. They would not survive. Eli looked frightened again, clinging to Rylan's jacket. The honey badger stepped closer to the boy, lowering itself so he could place a small hand on its fur. The creature did not pull away. Instead, it let the boy touch its shoulder, as if offering comfort in the only way it knew. For a brief moment, the fear around them softened. Then another explosion tore through a nearby building, snapping everyone back into reality. Mara pointed toward the outer field where the command unit was descending. They needed to reach it before it reached the colony core. If the unit activated fully, nothing would stop the raiders. The honey badger looked toward the field, its fur rising as if it felt the energy pulsing from the distant machine. Without waiting for the others, it began to run. Rylan and Mara followed, doing their best to keep up. Eli ran beside Rylan, holding tightly to his hand. The ground was rough, littered with scraps of metal and fallen beams. The air burned their lungs. The heat from the fires made it hard to breathe. But they knew they had no choice. If they stopped now, everything would be lost. They reached the outer field after several minutes of running. The sight before them was terrifying. The command unit was enormous, larger than any building in the colony. It floated above the ground on a platform of glowing red energy. Its shape resembled a giant armored insect, with long mechanical limbs and a single bright eye at its center. Smaller raider drones buzzed around it like protective swarms. Electrical currents flashed across its metallic body, lighting the field with pulses of blue and crimson. The honey badger growled deeply. Its fur glowed faintly again, sparks jumping across its back. It took a step toward the machine, then another. The ground shook each time. Mara, breathing hard, whispered that the creature might be the only one capable of damaging such a monster. Rylan nodded, though worry tightened his chest. He knew the honey badger had fought with incredible strength, but this enemy was unlike anything before. The drones noticed them and flew in fast, firing small bursts of plasma that scorched the dirt around their feet. Mara pulled Rylan and Eli behind a large metal container. The honey badger didn't hide. It leapt forward and struck a drone from the air. The drone spun wildly before exploding into sparks. Two more attacked. The creature rolled, dodging the blasts, and smashed them with swift claws. The command unit responded. Its central eye glowed brighter. A deep vibration spread across the field, causing the ground to crack. A massive energy shield expanded outward, pushing debris away and creating a large circle of glowing force. The honey badger braced itself as the wave hit. It slid back several feet but did not fall. Rylan watched in amazement. The creature recovered quickly and ran full speed toward the shield. When it hit, sparks exploded around its claws. The creature roared and pushed harder, muscles straining, but the shield held strong. Mara looked around desperately. She found an exposed generator half buried beneath collapsed metal. She shouted that if they could overload the generator, they might weaken the shield. Rylan hurried to help her. Together they pulled cables, flipped damaged switches, and kicked away burnt panels. The generator sputtered, fought against its own broken parts, then roared to life with a shaking burst of energy. The shield flickered. The honey badger saw the moment and struck again. This time its claws cut into the shimmering wall, leaving glowing scars of gold and blue. It roared again, pushing forward with unstoppable force. The shield cracked like glass under pressure. The command unit shifted, its central eye aimed at the creature. A beam of concentrated energy shot forward. The honey badger jumped aside, but the beam grazed its armor. The creature rolled across the ground, then stood again, growling with anger. Rylan's heart raced. Even the honey badger could be hurt. It was strong, but not invincible. Mara yelled for him to keep the generator running as she searched for another weak point. Eli tugged at Rylan's sleeve and pointed with shaking hands. A support beam on the underside of the command unit glowed brighter than the others. It pulsed with energy. The command unit shook violently after the honey badger's powerful strike, sparks flying from its broken support beam. Smoke poured from its wounded core, but it continued to rise, trembling like an injured giant refusing to fall. Its central eye flickered with unstable red light, and robotic growls echoed from deep inside its metal body. The ground around it cracked from the weight as it pulled itself upright. Rylan stepped back, shielding Eli as the machine prepared another attack. Mara watched the honey badger, noticing how its fur flickered like flames, each spark brighter than the one before. The creature was exhausted, its breathing heavy, its movements slower, but its determination did not fade. Instead, it grew stronger. The machine's central eye glowed intensely, building energy for a devastating blast. The air around the eye bent and vibrated, pulling dust toward it. Mara screamed for everyone to get down. Rylan dropped to the ground with Eli under him. The honey badger did not move away. It growled and stepped toward the machine, its claws lighting with golden fire. The command unit fired. A massive beam of blue and red energy ripped through the field, blowing apart broken metal, rocks, and anything unlucky enough to stand in its path. The shockwave sent Rylan tumbling. Mara covered her head as debris flew past. The blast struck the honey badger fully, throwing it across the battlefield. It slammed into the ground and slid several meters before coming to a stop. Eli cried out in fear, believing the creature had fallen for good. Rylan felt his heart sink. Mara's scanner flickered with unstable readings. For several seconds, no one moved. The machine's eye dimmed as it cooled down, satisfied with the damage it caused. Then the honey badger rose again. Slowly, painfully, but it rose, its body shook and steam lifted from its scorched armor. Its fur was burned in many places, but beneath those burns, a strange light glowed. Blue, gold, and white energy moved under its skin like living fire. The creature lifted its head and stared at the machine with eyes brighter than before. Those eyes were no longer only angry, they were determined, ancient, and powerful. Myra whispered that the honey badger was evolving. It was unlocking abilities far beyond what she had imagined. Maybe the creature had been holding back until now. Maybe this was its true strength. The machine began preparing another attack, charging its massive cannon. The honey badger inhaled deeply, lowering its stance. The ground beneath its feet vibrated. Tiny stones levitated around it as energy gathered inside its body. Rylan felt the air pressure change, almost like the moment before a storm breaks. Eli squeezed his hand tightly, sensing that something incredible was about to happen. The honey badger charged. Its speed was greater than before, so fast that it left trails of glowing light behind each movement. The machine fired again, but this time the honey badger dodged the beam with a sudden leap that cracked the earth. It soared upward, landing on the machine's main armor plate. The metal buckled under its weight. The machine roared in artificial anger, trying to shake the creature off. The honey badger dug its claws into the armor and climbed toward the central eye. Sparks shot out as the creature's energy grew brighter, burning through the machine's outer layers. The command unit thrashed sideways, smashing into the ground and crushing several drone remains. But the honey badger did not let go. Myra shouted encouragement, unable to control her excitement. Rylan watched, unable to blink. Eli whispered softly for the creature to be careful. The machine swung a massive mechanical limb toward the honey badger, trying to crush it. The creature leapt away the instant before impact, landing on another part of the machine's armor. The limb smashed into its own body, causing a loud metallic crunch. The honey badger took advantage of the moment and struck again, driving its claws deep into the weakened joint. Energy exploded from the damaged limb, sending bright flashes across the battlefield. The limb fell uselessly to the ground. The machine screeched in rage, sparks pouring from its wounded side. Rylan could hardly believe it. Even the powerful command unit was beginning to break apart. The honey badger climbed higher, reaching the edge of the machine's central eye. The eye glowed brightly, almost like fear, as the creature raised its claws. The machine released a blast of hot air, trying to push the creature back. But the honey badger held on. It pressed its claws against the lens, cracks forming instantly. The machine tried to fire again, but its energy core flickered. The honey badger roared. It brought its glowing claws down with full force. The central eye shattered. A burst of brilliant light shot outward, followed by a deep rumbling sound that shook the entire colony. The machine collapsed backward, its enormous body smashing into the ground. Dust lifted in a giant cloud, covering everything around it. Rylan held Eli close as the shockwave passed. Mara shielded her face. When the dust cleared, the command unit lay still, its lights dark, its limbs motionless. The honey badger stood on top of the fallen machine, breathing heavily. It looked victorious, but also tired, painfully tired. The glow under its fur dimmed slowly. The battle had taken a toll on it. Rylan, Mara, and Eli approached carefully. Eli was the first to move closer. The honey badger lowered its head toward him, allowing the boy to place both hands on its snout. The creature closed its eyes softly. Then Mara's scanner beeped rapidly. She checked the readings and gasped. Although the command unit was defeated, the raider ships in orbit were regrouping. A final wave was forming. A larger ship, far stronger than the others, was beginning to descend. Rylan felt the hope inside him shake. Mara whispered that this final ship could destroy what remained of the colony in minutes. The honey badger opened its eyes again. It turned its head toward the sky, where the huge shadow of the raider mothership grew larger. The creature understood. The last battle was coming. The shadow of the raider mothership stretched across the ruined colony like a dark cloud swallowing the sun. Its engines hummed with a deep vibration that made the ground tremble. Broken buildings shook. Fires flickered wildly. Even the air felt heavier as the enormous ship descended lower and lower. It was far bigger than anything the colony had ever seen, shaped like a giant mechanical predator with long arms, glowing vents, and sharp metallic edges. Its underbelly opened slowly, revealing a glowing core preparing to fire. Rylan held Eli close, feeling the boy's small hands shaking. Mara stared at the mothership with wide eyes, unable to hide her fear. She whispered that the final shot from such a ship could destroy everything left, the people, the buildings, even the land beneath them. There was nowhere to run now, no bunker strong enough, no weapon powerful enough, except the honey badger. The creature stood in the center of the broken field, staring up at the monstrous ship. Its fur glowed again, but this time the light was different, stronger. The colors shifted between gold, blue, and white, flickering like a star about to ignite. Its breathing was calm, steady, almost too calm for something facing certain death. It lowered its stance as if preparing for the greatest challenge of its life. Mara stepped forward and knelt beside the creature. She placed her hand gently on its shoulder. She didn't give orders. She didn't ask anything. She only whispered that whatever happened next, the colony would never forget it. The creature looked at her with warm, bright eyes, understanding more than she said. The mothership's core glowed brighter. Panels shifted into place. The attack was seconds away. The honey badger moved. Its claws dug into the ground, breaking the dirt. Energy surged beneath the earth, forming cracks shaped like glowing rivers. The creature's fur rose as its entire body filled with power. Rylan had never seen anything so intense. It was as if the creature gathered energy from the air, the earth, and even the burning colony itself. Then, with a roar loud enough to shake the sky, the honey badger launched upward. It shot into the air with a speed that seemed impossible, leaving a trail of glowing light behind it. A streak of gold and blue through the dark smoke. The mothership reacted immediately. Dozens of turrets opened and fired at the creature. Beams of energy crisscrossed the sky. Explosions erupted in midair. But the honey badger twisted, dodged, and spun through the storm of fire with unmatched agility. Each hit that came close only made its glow brighter. The creature climbed higher, soaring toward the mothership's core. Its claws ignited with white-hot energy. The ship's lower armor panels shifted, trying to trap it inside metal jaws. But the honey badger swung its claws and sliced through the thick plates like they were nothing but cloth. Rylan, Mara, and Eli watched from below, barely breathing as the creature reached the heart of the ship. The mothership attempted a final defense. A shield burst outward, glowing red, surrounding the core. It crackled like lightning, pushing back the honey badger. The creature clung to the surface, muscles straining, claws sinking deeper into metal. Its eyes glowed brighter than ever before, two golden suns burning in the darkness. With one final roar, the honey badger drove its claws into the center of the shield. The sky erupted with light. A shockwave of energy rippled outward, covering the entire colony in a blinding glow. Rylan shielded Eli. Mara covered her eyes. The world disappeared for several long seconds. When the light faded, the mothership's core cracked open. Bright blue flames burst from the wound. The huge vessel shook violently as sparks flew across its metal body. It started to tilt sideways, losing control. Explosions ran through its long arms. Entire sections broke off and tumbled to the ground far outside the colony walls. The honey badger leapt away just as the mothership began its final descent. The enormous ship crashed into the distant wasteland with a roar that echoed across the horizon. A massive cloud of dust and fire rose into the air. The ground shook under the colony, but when the trembling stopped, only silence followed. A long, peaceful silence that felt strange after so much destruction. Rylan looked up through the settling dust. The honey badger dropped from the sky and landed on the ground with a heavy thud. Its glowing fur dimmed, slowly fading back to its natural dark color. Its breathing was shallow now, each breath slow and heavy. The creature had given everything it had. Eli ran to it first, tears streaming down his face. He threw his arms around the creature's neck. The honey badger leaned its head gently against the boy, closing its eyes. Mara and Rylan joined them, kneeling beside the creature with deep respect. The colony lights flickered weakly in the distance. Survivors emerged from hiding places. Soldiers, engineers, families, they all stared at the honey badger in awe. The creature they once mocked had saved every single one of them. Mara placed her hand softly on its fur, whispering that the colony owed it more than words could express. Rylan nodded, feeling his eyes sting. Eli hugged the creature tightly, whispering thank you again and again. The honey badger opened its eyes one last time and looked at them with warmth, not anger or pride, but something deeper, protectiveness, loyalty, maybe even love. Its eyes slowly dimmed and its breathing softened. The creature lay still. Eli cried softly, but Mara wiped his tears and told him the truth. The honey badger had not died in vain. It had fulfilled its purpose, to protect the colony, to protect them. Its story would live forever. The survivors gathered around, forming a circle in silent respect. The sun rose in the distance, lighting the colony with soft golden rays. The fires began to fade, the smoke drifted away, and for the first time since the attack began, peace returned. Rylan stood and looked at the horizon, where the broken remains of the mothership lay quiet. Mara placed a hand on his shoulder. Eli held his hand tightly. The colony was wounded